Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered, where does it end? How far does it go? And more importantly, is it still expanding? These aren't just poetic questions. They're the kind of mysteries that have haunted scientists, philosophers, and dreamers for centuries. And in the 20th century, we finally got an answer. It turns out, the universe is not still. It's not frozen. It's expanding, constantly, like a balloon being inflated, pushing galaxies apart, second by second, across a canvas of unimaginable scale. This was a discovery that changed everything. In 1929, a man named Edwin Hubble noticed something peculiar. He observed that galaxies weren't just drifting, they were rushing away from us. The further away a galaxy was, the faster it seemed to be moving. It was as if the very fabric of space was stretching, pulling the cosmos apart. From this moment, the theory of the expanding universe was born. But here's where things get strange. Because over 1,300 years before Hubble ever aimed a telescope at the sky, a verse was spoken in the middle of the Arabian desert by a man who never studied astronomy, who could neither read nor write, who lived in a world with no telescopes, no satellites, and no formal science. And that verse, spoken in the 7th century, said something shockingly familiar. And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander. That's Surah 80 Duriyat, verse 47, a verse from the Quran, a book Muslims believe to be divine revelation. Now, let's pause for a second. We're not claiming this is proof. We're not trying to force a belief on you. But isn't that odd? A text from the 600s, centuries before Newton, before Einstein, before modern cosmology, mentioning the expansion of the heavens, not just the creation, not just the vastness, but the act of expanding. Some people say it's a coincidence. Some say it's a poetic metaphor, not meant to be taken literally. Others say this might be a glimpse of knowledge far ahead of its time. So what's really going on here? Is it a fluke? A mistranslation? Or does it point to something deeper? Something that invites us to ask questions we were never taught to ask? In this video, we'll explore the connection between that single verse in the Quran and the mind-blowing discoveries of modern astrophysics. We'll ask whether science and scripture are really as far apart as we think. And we'll look at how ancient texts might be holding clues we're only just beginning to understand. This is not about religion versus science. This is about a journey into wonder, into mystery, and into the very nature of reality itself. So, if you're someone who loves the stars, who's curious about the cosmos, who believes that truth, whatever it is, can stand the test of both faith and reason, then you're in the right place. Let's begin. To understand why this verse from the Quran is so compelling, we need to first explore what scientists actually mean when they say the universe is expanding. Let's go back to 1915, when Albert Einstein published his general theory of relativity. This wasn't just a theory about gravity. It was a theory about space itself. Einstein showed that space is an empty backdrop. It can bend, stretch, and warp. Now here's the twist. Einstein's original equation predicted that the universe should be either expanding or contracting. But like many at the time, Einstein assumed the universe was static. So he added a fudge factor, a cosmological constant, to keep things still. Fast forward to 1929, and Edwin Hubble's observations threw that assumption out the window. By analyzing the light from distant galaxies, Hubble discovered a phenomenon known as redshift, a stretching of light waves that indicates objects are moving away from us. And the further away a galaxy is, the faster it appears to be receding. It was as if space itself was growing, pushing galaxies apart. This wasn't galaxies flying through space. This was space itself expanding, carrying galaxies with it, like raisins moving apart as bread dough rises. Since then, this concept has become a foundational part of modern cosmology. From the Big Bang Theory to dark energy, every major model of the universe's birth and growth includes this idea of expansion. And yet, centuries before telescopes, space probes, and redshift graphs, we find this verse in the Quran. And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed, we are its expander. Surah 88 Dariyat, verse 47. In Arabic, وَسَمَا بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. Let's look at the Arabic word here. Musi'un. It comes from the root word wasi'a, meaning to expand, to make wide, or to enlarge. And the form used here, lemusi'un, is an active participle. It doesn't just say that expansion happened once in the past. It implies an ongoing action, a process. So the verse is not just poetic. It's grammatically active, describing something that continues. Now, let's be fair. Some skeptics argue that this verse could be metaphorical, referring to the vastness of the heavens, not literal expansion. Others say the language could simply mean we made it spacious, which isn't quite the same as cosmic expansion. And they're not wrong to ask these questions. Skepticism is healthy, especially when bridging ancient text and modern science. But here's where things get intriguing. If this verse simply said, "We created the heavens," that would align with many religious texts. It wouldn't stand out, but it doesn't stop at creation. It specifies expansion, an act that science only confirmed in the 20th century. And when Muslim scholars were reading this verse 1,000 years ago, they didn't know what a galaxy was. There were no models of an expanding cosmos, yet the wording has remained unchanged. So the question arises, how could a 7th century book contain language that accidentally aligns with one of the most profound discoveries in astrophysics? Coincidence? Divine inspiration? Or perhaps something we don't yet fully understand? It's also important to point out, the Quran is not a science textbook. Its purpose is spiritual, not experimental. But when a spiritual text aligns as closely with modern scientific insight, it opens a door to curiosity, to reflection. Because if just one verse can mirror a modern discovery, what else might be waiting to be rediscovered? We live in an age of knowledge. We can map galaxies, sequence DNA, and simulate consciousness. And yet, the biggest question we face may not be how things work, but why they exist at all. The Quran makes a bold, almost unsettling statement. We will show them our signs and horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that this is the truth. Surah Fussilat 41 verse 53. It suggests that the universe out there and the self in here are both signs, not random, not meaningless, but deliberate. So let's pause and ask the questions that science alone cannot answer. Why are we self-aware? Why do we not only live, but know that we live? Why can we love, hope, regret, and dream? These are not just chemical reactions. They are experiences, felt, known, remembered. Where does consciousness come from? Billions of neurons fire in our brain, yes. But at what point do electrical signals turn into me? And then there's this. Why do we seek meaning at all? Why do humans look up at the stars and ask, what's out there? But also look inward and ask, what am I here for? We build telescopes. We write poetry. We create religion. We invent science. Always searching. Could this relentless pursuit of understanding itself be a sign? The Quran doesn't shy away from such questions. It invites them. Do they not reflect upon themselves? Surah Ar-Rum 30, verse 8. Were they created by nothing, or were they the creators of themselves? Surah At-Tur 52, verse 35. These are not verses demanding belief. They're invitations to ponder. If we are just accidents of matter, why do we care about justice? Why does beauty move us? Why do we long for eternity in a world filled with death? What is it about the human being that longs? For something more? And if, as the Quran says, the soul is from the command of my Lord. Surah Al-Isra 17, verse 85. Then maybe we're not just bodies with thoughts. Maybe we are souls with vessels. Maybe self-awareness isn't an evolutionary glitch. Maybe it's a whisper, a reminder of something greater. And that brings us to a deeper question. If both the universe and our inner selves point to design, then what or who is a designer? So here we are, from redshifting galaxies to expanding space, to questions that echo not in labs, but in the chambers of the heart. We've looked outward into the fabric of the cosmos, and inward into the structure of the soul. And somewhere between quarks and quasars, between revelation and redshift, a question lingers. Could it all be connected? There's a moment, if you've ever been alone under a night sky, when the silence feels louder than sound, a sense that the universe is not just big, but speaking, not in words, but in patterns, in laws, in beauty, in ache. And in that moment, belief doesn't feel like submission. It feels like recognition, like your soul remembering something it had always known, but had forgotten. Maybe the Quran didn't come to compete with science. Maybe it came to complete the question, not to explain the how of galaxies, but to whisper the why. Maybe that ancient desert voice wasn't trying to make us less rational, but more awake, more curious, more alive, more willing to stand in wonder and not be embarrassed by it. After all, what is the point of knowledge if not to draw us closer to truth? And what is truth if not something that can endure both telescope and scripture, calculation and contemplation? So if this journey left you with more questions than answers, good. You're thinking, you're seeking, you're doing exactly what the Quran asks. So where are you going? Surah at-Takwir 81, verse 26. In the end, belief is not about closing your eyes. It's about opening them wider. It's not about shutting down science. It's about following it to the edge of itself until you find that in the silence between galaxies and the silence between your own thoughts, there may be a voice, still, gentle, familiar, calling you not to fear, but to wonder. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey meaningful, share it, not to preach, but to invite, because maybe, just maybe, in a universe that keeps expanding, so can we.